Hello, I'm Pastor Nanette Christofferson, and along with Pastor Steve Talmadge, we offer these short Bible studies on our lectionary readings. This week, we find ourselves in the Old Testament in the book of Daniel, chapter 7, verses 1 through 3, and 15 through 18. Our commentary is by Kristen J. Wenland of 2019. When we look to the book of Daniel, oftentimes we think of the first 6 chapters, and I'll be honest with you, I think the first 6 chapters are far more interesting than the last 6 chapters of this book. The last 6 chapters are more apocalyptic, but if we look to the first 6 chapters, we really see Daniel's perspective and his insight into the Babylonian Empire, into the visions he had, but the things that happened to him are just so fascinating. In the first 6 chapters of Daniel, we have not only King Nebuchadnezzar and the fiery furnace of Abednego and Shadrach and Meshach, that exciting story, but we also have Daniel in the lion's den too. And I love how Daniel chapter 6 ends with the writing on the wall. And so the first 6 chapters to me seem very exciting. And the last 6, well, they are more about a vision and visions that he has, and they can seem difficult to us to interpret and what they might all be about. So here we enter into Daniel chapter 7. I encourage you to read the other verses that are in between 1 through 3 and 15 through 18. And we enter into a vision or a dream that Daniel is having. In the first year of King Belshazzar of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions of his head as he lay in bed. Then he wrote down the dream. I, Daniel, saw in my vision by night the 4 winds of heaven stirring up the great sea, and the 4 great beasts came out of the sea, different from one another. As for me, Daniel, my spirit was troubled within me, and the visions of my head terrified me. I approached one of the attendants to ask him the truth concerning all this. So he said that he would disclose to me the interpretation of the matter. As for these 4 great beasts, 4 kings shall arise out of the earth, but the holy ones of the Most High shall receive the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever and ever. So let's take a look at the dream Daniel had. Daniel 7 recounts the dream of Daniel, described as a young Judean exile in the Babylonian court, though Babylon here acts as a cipher for the Greek Empire, the superpower of Daniel's day. The portion of the chapter assigned for All Saints' Day describes only the beginning of Daniel's dream, in which 4 great beasts arise out of the sea, and the interpretation of the dream by a heavenly being. In response to Daniel's terror and misapprehension at the end of his dream, this heavenly being explains that the 4 beasts represent 4 kings or kingdoms, but that the holy ones of the Most High shall receive the kingdom in the end. The holy ones likely refers to heavenly beings, though their exact identity remains disputed. So let's take a look at Daniel's dream. What is clear is that they are on the side of God and on the side of good. Neither the beasts nor the empires that they represent will be victorious in the end. Although the 4 kingdoms, are not identified in the passage, history shows them to be the Babylonians, the Medes, the Persians, and the Greeks. As we look to this passage, do we see it to be, or understand it to be, a hopeful passage? The redacted description of the dream includes not only descriptions of the 4 beasts and their terrifying power, but 10 horns arising from the 4th beast, with an 11th horn erupting noisily at the end. In response to this last beast with its mouthy 11th horn, the Ancient One appears to put the beast to death and to deprive the other 3 beasts of power. Then a human figure descends from the heavens to reign at the behest of God, the Ancient One. As an apocalyptic text, this chapter describes earthly political matters, particularly as they pertain to the people of Judea, in light of a larger cosmic narrative in which the outcome is already certain. Daniel 7 is set in light of the harsh Hellenization efforts of Antiochus Epiphanes, the Greek king of the Seleucid Empire and ruler in Judea from 175 to 164 BCE. The apocalyptic material in the book of Daniel provides hope for a rather powerless people who have experienced affronts such as having their observations of Torah forbidden and the cult of Zeus set up in their temple in Jerusalem. Their faithfulness may have been under attack, but they could look forward to a day when they will be victors, thanks to the faithfulness of God. Scholar Anethea E. Portier-Young maintains that one of the roles of apocalyptic writings is to make visible a system of imperial domination and hegemonic discourse that would have preferred to operate under the cloak of darkness and to counter the totalizing discourse of that imperial power with an alternative vision. In other words, a savvy empire will work its machines or machinations in such a way that its people will accept the empire's request for a fealty as normal and reasonable. An apocalypse cries, that is not reasonable. It is ironic that the apocalyptic writing meant to make an oppressive force visible would be written with such strong recourse to symbol and metaphor. Yet, such associations do more than offer a cloak of plausible deniability against treason or slander. The genre allows one to represent the oppressor in ways that are dangerous and chaotic. So, for instance, Daniel depicts the Babylonians, the Medes, the Persians, and the Greeks as monsters in Daniel 7, veiling their identity, but also using metaphor to communicate the monstrous extent of the situation. They arise out of chaotic waters, suggesting their obstruction to God's good ordering of creation. With the true motivation of their rulers revealed, albeit symbolically, the opposing vision of the Ancient One, handing over the kingdom of the Holy Ones, cuts through the attempted obfuscation of the empire. The real, reasonable, faithful vision of God's world is this one, and it will come to pass. As we look to this apocalyptic writing in the gospel, I always want to say, in the book of Daniel, we see something interesting that we also see noticeable in the book of Revelation. And the good news is that God wins. As we also, and was pointed out, I think it's important when we look at apocalyptic texts of why they're written the way they are, and they don't just flat out speak out against the powers that be. They use metaphors and other things because of the dangers of speaking out like that in that day. So it's important to remember how they are approaching it so that others might understand and have hope in God, but also realize the dangers in calling out the powers that be. So I'd like you to think about maybe this question today. Why do you suppose this writing is a part of God's Word, this type of writing? And that answer might be rather obvious because it provides hope. And it's a way of helping us 2,000 years later, seeing how prophets like Daniel and people of their day were able to offer hope when it seemed like there wasn't any. I hope you have some time today to kind of go through the whole book of Daniel, for it's in my mind, it's a pretty exciting read and fun to pass through and review some of the stories that you heard and to see how God worked in the time of the Babylonian Empire. I hope that this week you have time for that, and I also hope that as you go through your week that your eyes might be open to see where God is interacting in your life. Have a blessed day.